Hi, I'm Cody Alexander with MatchQuarters. Welcome to another The Art of X show. We are continuing on our journey through split field coverages. Going to end with cover three here pretty soon. We're going to do bracket and trap coverages next, and then we'll eventually finish with a cover three podcast that covers kind of the basics of cover three. Today's topic is going to be defending trips with split field coverages, going over the basics, kind of also talking about the different philosophies that people have within the realm of split field coverages. I think it's important to understand, in essence, who you are as a defense and then how your trips coverages relate. I'm a little bit unique in the way that I teach my main trips coverage, which is stress, which I will talk about in depth, but also kind of where a lot of people fall with Stubby, special, and even stump. We're going to start off, though, with solo or poach coverage. I think this is the most basic of all the ways that you teach quarters coverage or split field coverage. Now, on the front side, you're going to take the number one and number two receiver, and you're just going to play a triangle over them. Now, you can play quarters or you can play cover two. Now, quarters in my language is sky, cover two in my language is cloud, and those are read. Those are match zones. Those are zone match, not man match, zone match, and not pure zone. Rail it would be the term that I would use for quarters, just a pure cover four quarters, and then just kind of a we would call a cold call or a triangle, whatever. I've used several different terms to just get a true cover two, and typically we're not going to play that unless it's a bunch. So the topic today again is trips coverages. Trips is three wide receivers outside, detached from the box. It's a four open look or a 10 personnel look. Now, we can talk about where they put the tight end, one, two, or three, how that changes. Maybe it's a running back, maybe it's fullback, and they're kind of an all 11 team. I know I'm not trying to get into that. Typically, if the tight ends at two, you're getting more screen action, so you kind of can play some things differently. Tight ends at one, again, why are we wasting a guy? I probably wouldn't play Stubby or special. So that's kind of just a short little thing on that. So solo and punch, poach. Solo is a word basically telling the backside corner, you're on your own. So it's solo coverage. The backside safety and the backside corner are going to be on their own. This is a cheat step. Now, again, working with the option and having played within an option program, we never want to cross the A gap. Typically, if teams know that you're going to run solo or poach the backside safety, you're going to get speed option weak. I'll never forget, we had to play, I think it was like a sophomore game when I was at Midlothian, and the team that we were playing that week didn't have two JV teams, so we had to find a game with Highland Park. So we're playing JV in Highland Park. Highland Park's a storied program in downtown Dallas. They do an unbelievable job. Great coaches, great kids. And I knew, and I leaned into it. I said, we're going to play solo here. I said, but watch, the moment that they find out, they're going to run speed option. And sure enough, they do it because they're smart coaches. Any kind of smart, and that's kind of the tell that I get. I'll tip my hat to you as a defense coordinator if you're an OC and you see leverage like that and you start using it against us. So that is one thing that you have to be aware of when you run poach coverage. The questions that I always get is, what are the cover? How do you like, and why do you pick certain coverages? Well, if I have an absolute beast at the backside corner, if I know my boundary corner is a dude, and it does not matter, I can lock him on the X receiver. I don't care who they got over there. It doesn't matter, which I've had one. And when you have one, it just unlocks the entire defense. You can play solo as a base. Typically, where I've played solo is against quad sets. So either four out, or they set the running back to the trip side and we're getting a lot of push action. If we're getting a lot of push action, I like to run solo because it detaches the nickel from having to carry it vertical. We've actually pushed the coverage over one spot. I've even gone into game plans where our trips coverage was based on the back. And I know I've talked about this before. If we got quads, we soloed it because I wasn't worried about backside run game. And then if they put the running back to the back, we treated it like empty and we played split field. So again, it really depends on what you're getting. If everything is going front side, they're not really worried about the X receiver anyway, and just all of the concepts are going front side, then you want to load the zone. And the only way you can load the zone is to push it. But if you're one of those defenses that's like, we're a cover 2 defense, and so where's 2 weeks to front side, we're going to solo, you're going to start getting into trouble, because offenses are going to know your rules. They're going to get in trips. You're going to see a lot of trips, and then they're going to attack you on the weak side. So how does solo work? First off, the backside safety has to give the corner a lock call. The corner has to know, hey, look, I have no help. I might have some help inside late. The will linebacker or the inside linebacker that's left in the box needs to be riding that vertical hook. If the running back doesn't push, if the running back push, he has to take it. So essentially what you're doing is you're playing man to the weak side, and then you're pushing everything zone wise to the trips. You're unlocking the nickel from having to carry a vertical, which we will get into when we talk split field coverage, because now you're capping him with a safety. So now that both the safeties essentially are working over top of 2 and 3 respectively. This is very similar to midpoint coverage, where the safeties essentially play the midpoint of each of 2 and 3, and then 3 in the backside. So it works very similar to the same thing. So if you're coming from like the Narduzzi universe, midpoint is a word that you hear a lot of the times. Nickel kind of lives in that gray area. He's got to carry vertical, but he's kind of capped. Maybe he may not be capped. Just depends on what it is. I like this too, especially if 1 and 2, we're getting a lot of switches with 1 and 2. One's working back into the zone all the time, right? He's working back to the box all the time, and we want to play a game over 1 and 2. Then this is a great way to do it. You always see the 7-on-7 where 1 and 2 are wide and 3's isolated. They're trying to get your mic, and so you get 1 and 2 really wide, 3's isolated, kind of in this weird in between. He's not really reduced to the box, but he's not really wide. They're trying to get that mic to inch out there and kind of be isolated, and then just run them up the pipe. If you see a lot of that, this is also a great way to play this. The cheat steps to solo and poach are the key that unlocks now kind of a cover 3 technique with your safeties, right? Because it's a shuffle. I'm reading 3. If 3's vertical, I'm going to go ahead and roll into it. If 3's not vertical, the offense has brought me to the post. I'm going to square back up, look at the quarterback, look at the mesh, and then do that. Typically, this again is why whether you're an odd front team or an even front team, you want to build a 5 and a 3 opposite the trips. So what I would say is with this is that you want to create a wall weak, natural run building wall weak, because now your safety who's cheating has that ability to then roll back on top of that and be late to that. You still have your will linebacker, but that safety's going to have to be late because he's going cheat. Oh crap, it's run. Now I'm going to go weak. Normally, you would not see a speed option pass. I haven't seen it yet. I think that's difficult mechanics for the quarterback. Take a couple sprint steps, drop back, and then try and hit a pop pass weak. That would be something cool to try. So if you're an offensive coach, that's something to take notes on and put it down there. Sorry, I'm giving the answers to the test to these offensive guys. If you're a defensive guy listening to it, I call the poach safety. He's a double alley player, and you're going to fit off flow. So once I get to my post, 3's not a problem. Let's say they're running some sort of like a bubble, right? Like zone read with a bubble, just basic spread 101. Well, 3 runs a bubble. The moment I see him out, I can snap my eyes back. I'm sitting on the post. I'm reading the quarterback. Now I can see, oh, it's run. Now I can fit, and I can cap that fit from inside out. It's essentially kind of like that 3 high alignment. You're putting the middle safety right on top of the ball, and then he's kind of fitting off of the back. That's essentially what he's going to end up here. Mike now is going to be a wall 3 player, and typically he would be in charge, whether you're a tight front team and under front team. You're going to close that B gap with that tackle either by putting them there or using a heavy technique. Remember, this is still 7-man spacing, so you want to make sure that these safeties are these secondary support players, so they're not able to be into the box. So you want to make sure that you're canceling gaps up front, whether it's through a G front mechanics, an under front with a heavy 5, or just putting the guy in there in a tight front. You want to find a way to close those B gaps again with ways that you're doing it. Another good way, if you want to keep your regular structure and keep that B gap open, another good way to do that is anytime you get quads, you can have some sort of a read pop backside. That's kind of a go-to for a lot of teams. Anytime they get a quad set, they'll give some sort of a call to the 3-5 side saying that, hey, if you get zone your way, we can pop you back in. It allows that will really the freedom, and you can get that full cover down by that Mike. So again, it's another way of 7-man spacing, stealing the back. Now, I use Poach a different way than I use Solo. Solo is a true 10 personnel tag. So if we get 4 open and we get 3-by-1, we are calling it Solo. Poach is a technique that we use in 2-back, which is more of a flat foot read. Solo tells us we are locking the corner and I am moving to the 3. It's an active. I'm real big on passive and active cues. Poach is passive. Solo is active. So we're actively working to 3. Poach is flat foot. I'm waiting, I'm seeing, I'm reading my indicator, and we would not typically play Poach with a 3 remove. We would play Poach with an attached. I like to give kids different techniques so that way we can take this. Solo and Poach also open you up for steal coverage, which is where you're kind of trapping the crosser. It's essentially, if you have watched anything, weak rotation, a lot of teams now are starting to play in the cover 3 universe, weak rotation buzz, which I would call cross. They're just using too high alignment and they're just kind of weak rotating, and they're letting that boundary safety cut any kind of cross and let that frontside safety push vertically and hold that hash and not necessarily work back to the post unless he gets threatened. Quarters universe, that is your steal coverage. We're stealing the backside safety, putting him into the middle hole, cutting any crosser. It works very similar to what you would see with Solo, but it's again, Poach, steal, are passive. He's not climbing for a vertical right now. He's working to the middle right now, and then he's going to collect it, but we're locking the backside. So steal, Solo, Poach, these are all going to be within the same universe, and they're all relatively related to each other. Now, front side over 1 and 2, again, you can play quarters, you can play cover 2. If you're watching this on YouTube, for the sake of just a visual, I put a triangle over it. So I put a cover 2. You can check sky. You can play your Meg quarters out of this. Now it's going to be a little different because your safety isn't essentially going to take any 2 out. Your nickel's unattached from the box. He is not in charge of the box. So you can play your regular, like lock the corner, but then now we can play some bracket concepts with number 2, which typically in trips, that's who the most dangerous is going to be number 2. And so you can kind of play with leverage and things off of Solo. Now, we're going to move on to stress. Now, stress is a coverage, again, that is very unique to the system that I learned. So this is a Phil Bennett concept that he created back in the 90s when the air raid was starting to become big. He needed an answer to play cover 3, but with quarters concepts off of it. And it was really interesting hearing him talk about the history. He was at LSU. He went and visited. He said he couldn't remember who he was talking to with New Orleans, but he was visiting the Saints, and they were kind of playing around with some ideas in the coaching office. And he's like, we're starting to see a lot of 3 verticals out of a trip set, and I don't want to play country cover 3. We need to start playing some different things. How can we play quarters over the trips? And this is where stress came out. Now, stress as a term is normally used with what I call taser. So stress a lot of the times is when you lock the mic on 3. That's not what my stress is talking about. So stress is we are stressing quarters over 3 receivers. We're stretching it over the 3 receivers. We're taking our sky coverage and we are uncapping the nickel and we are stretching that sky coverage across 1, 2, and 3. The corner is still playing mod on number 1. That hasn't changed. The only thing that I tell him is, hey, I would like it if you take a step inside and a step deep. I'm not worried by the fate of 1. Most quarterbacks, even at the college level, Division I quarterbacks, if you talk to OCs at that level, they are not throwing the vertical of 1 to the trip side a lot. That's a very minimal call. That's a call that they think maybe we got something. They're playing a lot of trap coverage. Maybe we can buy that. They get caught in a weird Tampa 2 rotation, and we can maybe hit that as it's an alert. It's a, hey, that guy's running naked down the field. You better hit him. Right. That's where that comes from. So the corner is going to still play mod. The nickel, and when I introduce this to coverage to players, I tell that nickel back up to 6, get your outside foot back. You're going to key 3, but you're going to match 2. Your rules in Sky have not changed, except for we are going to play this more like man match. Now you can take that inside hand and you can push it through and we can man turn into number 2. Whereas if we were teaching regular Sky, I want to play basketball. I want to stay square. I'm reading 3. If I get a push alert, then I push with it. So I tell these guys, once we get aligned up, I said, turn around. Do you have a safety directly behind you? And the answer is always no, I don't have a safety. So I tell them, you are uncapped. You do not have a safety. You have to carry the vertical of number 2. You are responsible for the vertical of number 2. You have all of him up and you have all of him out. If he bends it back, you can then play basketball underneath, knowing that you're probably going to buy the safety back from it. So the nickel, again, you have all of number 2 up and out. So you are uncapped. I am quick reading 3. I can always hear a push call late. Typically, what you will get as a quote unquote stress beater is you are going to get a vertical of 1, a vertical of 2, and you're going to get a sail concept by 3. What they're trying to do is get you to detach from 3 with the nickel, and then they're going to sneak them in behind, knowing that that Mike's going to have to chase and that safety's going to have to chase. I always tell that safety, if he's inside the hash, line up on top of him. So as a base rule, we want to be inside eye, but as they get more comfortable and as we kind of understand what the routes are, typically when I introduce stress, we run 3 verticals first, just so that they get an understanding of it. That nickel has to know I have to carry it. That corner has to know that I'm really defending number 1, but that nickel's bringing number 2 to me. I'm kind of playing in this weird little universe. I'm not playing cover 3, but I'm not playing necessarily quarters. It's a very, very soft mod concept to the outside. Anytime that 3 were to quick push, it turns into sky coverage. And that's what I love about this coverage, is it's so simple for the kids to understand. All we're doing is uncapping the nickel. And I'm already kind of telling the safeties, who do we want to cap? Who do we want to cap? And they should be able to repeat back to me the worst coverage defender. Well, in trips, that's your Mike. Your Mike's your worst coverage defender. We're moving him out of the box. Now the safety's going to cap him. The safety has all of number 3 back. So he's got 3 up, he's got 3 back. If 3 runs a sail, we're giving a push call. He's going to climb to the cap of number 2, and then the nickel hopefully can sail out and get and collect that sail. Other concepts that you're going to see is like little, basically what LSU made famous with the slot fade to number 2. The nickel should, after a quick read, he should be pushing through the hip of number 2, trail technique, catch mentality, eyes to 1. If 1 sits down, we're going to get a smash call. If you remember in the previous pod, I said anytime we have inside alignments by our overhangs, we have smash calls. So the corner, that's why I tell him to take one more step inside and one more step deep. Teams will try and get you on the slot fade, or what they will try and do is get that bender back by 2, that snag concept by 3, sit down by 1, and then bend that thing back. But you should have a safety and a corner working to cone that number 2. The problem that people run into when they first learn about stress and they try to introduce it is that they try and reverse engineer it to cover 3. And it makes sense to me because when you kind of talk about it introductory, you're kind of talking about it cover 3, right? Like safety, pack into the hash, corner, try and get to the unit, try and get to the apex of your unit of 1 and 2, lean on 2, but you're really covering 1. It sounds a lot like cover 3. The issue gets in, and I normally will get an email or a DM from a coach that has installed it, is, hey, we went to 7-on-7 this summer. Team was running slot fade with number 2. We were just getting killed on it. We gave up a couple. What's the problem? And I'm always asked, the first question I ask is the nickel carrying through number 2? Is he carrying it man to man all the way through as a vertical? And or are you not teaching the smash rule in the corner overlap? And typically what happens is, let's say we do get 4 verticals, we get a sit down by, we get a comeback by 1. So they push vertical, come back by 1. They give you kind of a slot fade or a bender by number 2, and then they kind of give you a deep cross runoff by number 3. And what will happen is that nickel, who's generally used to having a safety on top of him, sits down at around 10 or 12, tries to find work, sees the ball get bombed over top of him, throws his hands up like, where's my corner of safety? So it's not solo coverage. It's not cover 3. The nickel has to go. We're playing basically man match. We're playing a match concept here that nickel has to carry through. So that is stress. What I, usually when I go over this is, with the playbook, corner, I want you at 7 yards. I want you to take an extra step inside. Everybody's a 3-2-1, because once I see 3, if 3 pushes quickly, 3 disappears underneath. I know right now it turns back into sky. We'll probably play some sort of railet technique because we're not pressing. Everybody's kind of off. That nickel or that Sam is a full cover down. He's not in charge of the box. There's no reason why he should be worried about the box. The other thing too, and I'll talk about this at the end, is quads push. He's not worried about the back. That's too weak. He's worried about 3. Mike will be in a hip. I've got to work to the near hip of 3. If they are over splitting me, that is normally when we will give a rip tag, or we will just give a tight call and go ahead and close the B gap with that. That way he's in charge of the C gap. Safety, I want them back at 12. I want them inside eye to start on 3. But eventually, if we start getting reductions, or we start getting comfortable, we're not getting a lot of 3 verticals, then we'll go to head up. But what that allows us to do, because we're doing this, now we've completely taken the backside safety, and we now have a triangle that we can play with backside. And we'll talk about backside coverages here in a second. Now, the second thing I'm going to talk about is the special Stubby universe. This, to me, is what is mostly a go-to. When I watch film at the high school level and they're running split field coverages, I see 2 things. I see solo, or I see special Stubby. And typically you're running Stubby. Now, Stubby is a man match concept. It's from the cover 7 universe of the Saban system. This is how they play 3. They kind of have their own little world of doing it. I am from the special universe, where we're pretty much playing 2 read over cover 2 and 3. And then the corner is just essentially locked on number 1. People call it X coverage. I've even heard it called lock. Some people call it mini. Just depends on who you're talking to with that, from that universe. But the 2 main ones that I hear a lot of the times are special and Stubby. Now, it's very easy. Why do we run it? Well, number 1's not a threat. I'm just going to go ahead and lock the corner on him. We're going to eliminate them all together. These guys don't have to worry about him running underneath of them, zoning back to me, anything. I don't care. We're not dealing with it. The nickel now is going to move outside of number 2. He's got all of 2 up and out. We're going to have a wall 3 player with the mic, and the safety is going to play it like Cloud, with number 3 being his new number 2, right? So what we've done is we're playing 10 on 10 instead of 11 on 11. We've essentially eliminated that wide receiver outside, not worried about it. And now we're playing a triangle over 2 and 3. When we are installing trips coverages, I start with stress, and then we teach special stubby when we teach cloud, because this is our cloud concept. So I tell the kids, you talk about interchangeable parts, right? Like when we are repurposing sky over trips, that's stress. We're stressing the coverage. When we want to run cloud over 2 and 3, we will call it special, right? So that has been the way that we typically do that. We will run it when 2 and 3 get close, when 2 and 3 are running switch routes, when we're getting a lot of movement out of that. Let's say we're getting killed by bubbles, my poor little nickels out there getting killed. Let's say that they have a tight end at number 2 and they're running bubbles with number 3. They're running screens. I want to play this. I don't want to necessarily play stress, which is a little bit more of a passive. This is a harder coverage, right? This is catch coverage. This is cloud. Okay, we're being a little bit more aggressive. Catch mentality. Safety is now truly a secondary support player. He can now really get up high and again work on that hash. So everybody is still king number 3 except for the corner, who's now going to be locked on number 1. And so all I want is that nickel to move from an inside cover down to now I'm outside eye. I'm flipping my feet. My outside foot is vertical. My inside foot is back. Right now I'm tilted open to number 3. We're king number 3, and I'm playing it just like cover 2. When I normally introduce this, I will take the nickels with me. So if you're one of those, hey, we're a 4-3 team or we're a 3-4 and we kind of have a hybrid player out there, he goes with the linebackers, but in trip season coverage, I'll tell them to get in line with the corners, and we'll run cloud drill, and we'll run cloud against all the 2-man concepts. We'll play 2v2, and we'll just let them play it with the corners. That way they get an idea of, hey, this is how this relates. Now, I will say this. If you have DBs as your hybrid players, let's say it's a third safety, it's a third corner, it's a really athletic guy, he likes playing coverage, then there's nothing wrong with playing or basing out of special stubby. I think you get in trouble when you put a linebacker who's used to being a wall player. He's used to working inside out, and then all of a sudden you put him outside in. I don't think people understand how difficult that is for kids to play. And I'll never forget, we had an outside linebacker at Midlothian. We played a lot of 9-man spacing out of a 3-4. We played Meg quarters. Those linebackers were not really in charge of coverage. Teams would try and go 3-by-1 with us, and they would try and get him isolated. And I asked him one time, I said, do you not like our special coverage? And he said, Coach, I just don't feel comfortable outside. I don't feel comfortable with the cover 2 read. I feel like I'm late. I'm staring. Whereas inside, it's a 3 push, and then I am walling number 2. I'm just more aggressive to it, and I man turn instead of playing basketball. And so for him, it was a better transition. And so that's why I want to be seen as a player's coach. I think a lot of times that term gets thrown out there as like, oh, well, you just kind of let them do whatever the hell they want, or you're trying to be their friend. And so it's kind of dirtied that word in the coaching universe. I think the true meaning of a player's coach is you do what's best for your players. Hey, you can't do this, or hey, you're not great at this. You're really good at this. You feel comfortable doing this, but you don't feel comfortable doing that. And so I think you hear it all the time in the NFL too with quarterbacks. Quarterbacks talk about, oh, I talk to the coach about what I like, and these are the things that I'm good at, and playing to the strengths of the quarterback. Well, why would you not do that with other positions within football? If your outside linebacker is a true outside linebacker, and he's not a secondary player, he's not a hybrid player, why would you then force him to do something that is difficult to teach? And so that's where I like stress. And I always preach stress to people. Start there. If you have a third corner, if you play a lot of bracket, you have a third corner. The nickel is a really good man coverage guy. Let's say you got a Petrie who plays now for the Texans. When he was at Baylor, he could blitz, he could guard a tight end, he could guard a slot, he could play man coverage, he could do whatever you want, he could play deep. If you have a kid like that, that's kind of just a universal tool, a Swiss Army knife, well, then you can play him outside. I just think that teams get, especially at the high school level, you get into trouble when you try and put a square peg in a round hole. I've got an outside linebacker. He's a linebacker. He goes with the linebackers all day. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, hey, I need you to play in space. So I would rather teach block destruction, which he's already learning from stress, knowing if we get a bubble a lot because of inside leverage, play through that. And I've got a bigger kid out there. So let's invite the bubble so I can then go ahead and destroy this tiny little slot. Whereas with the nickel, now, okay, let's put them outside leverage. Let's go ahead. I don't, the friction right there is a little too much for me. So that's where I'm philosophically, I don't want to play solo unless I have to, but I do understand that that's probably the easiest way to play split field coverage, right? And it's not, I wouldn't technically say it's not really split field, but you are playing man to one side and you're loading the zone the other. Stress is where I would start. I think it's the easiest, especially if you base out of quarters. If you're a cover two team, then yeah, go ahead and base out a solo, right? Because you're playing cover two, or go ahead and base out a special stubby. And because I think that's the easiest. Now, the sister, in the way that I related stress back into stubby special, was stump. Now, I do understand that the way that Saban teaches it is unique to him. I'm just saying the way that I teach this coverage is that I don't change anything for that corner. That corner is going to be a mod corner. I'm telling him right now, you're playing stress. Nothing changes for you. All we're doing is changing the leverage. We're mixing and matching instead of locking number one. Because here's the reason why I like stump better than I like special stubby. If I know number one isn't really a threat, or I know number one is only catching the ball when he works back inside, then why would I lock somebody on him and waste a defender? Right? The things that you're going to get when they know that they're isolating the nickel are slot fades, verticals by two, things of that nature. Why would I not then go ahead and let that corner assist that nickel? Okay. I think it also opens you up for ways that you can do other coverages, like playing skinny out of it when you get to your cover three world, which is essentially creating a box over 2 and 3, and that corner's playing mod on number one. So he's playing all number one except shallow, which is what you call that, which you would call mod or mess. Mess is just a soft press. So anytime one goes in, we're giving an undercall, and then he's just going to feather out and he's going to find help. The nickel, the mic, and the safety, nothing changes. Okay. All we're doing is I'm just letting another guy get vertical so that if anything breaks free here, we can create a box over it and he's got help. Okay. Now we can get into it. Now, it's funny, when I was talking to one of my mentors, Jim Gush, he was on staff at Baylor. He's now the defensive coordinator at Incarnate Ward. I'm a young coach. I'm studying other things because I'm not working at Baylor anymore. So I'm trying to, all this kind of special stubby stump stuff. I come to him like, hey, what about, you ever thought about doing this? You ever thought about doing that? And every time he would ask, well, how does it play off against this? Okay, well, the nickel does this and the mic goes here. And he's like, that's the same in stress. Now the nickel's taking this, the mic's doing this. Oh, well, that plays the same as stress. So what really was the difference? The difference is leverage. So you're just playing, it's just a simple way of getting your nickel outside. Hey, I'm tagging this as stump. I'm tagging this as special. I'm locking the corner. I'm getting the nickel outside. Okay, stump, it's a mod corner. I'm getting the nickel outside. I'm helping the leverage there. And it gives the kids, because the way that I've taught it is it's true split field coverage. We're independent from the other side. We go off the splits of the receivers. 2 and 3 are close. We want to run stump and special. And I've got to tell that Mike as well too, is that, you're a true wall builder now. Now you're really playing in that seam of 3, and I don't necessarily have to worry about chasing anything because the nickel's going to take it. We have a better, but it's funny when people really dig into this and they start getting into the nitty gritty. I will always get them come back and say, man, stump and stress are the exact same thing. Yes, it's just you're changing the leverage. So that's the most important thing. Those are your basics. So again, let's go over our front side coverage basics. We have solo and poach, which is push coverage, right? We're pushing it to the trips. We have stress, where we've taken Sky and we've stretched it. We've uncapped the nickel. He's not covered. He's got a man match number 2 out and up. Okay. Then we go to the special Stubby universe, which is locking number one, Xing him out. And then we're playing a cloud 2-read concept, palms, however you want to call it, over 2 and 3. We like that when 2 and 3 are close. We like stress traditionally out of regular trips. Then you have Stump, which is the sister of Stubby Special, which is essentially a mod corner with 2-read palms, cloud over top of 2 and 3. Now, what all of these split field coverages do, except for solo, is it allows you to really manipulate the backside. And that's what we're going to talk about now, because it would be one thing to just talk trips coverage in split field. But if you're not going to talk about the backside, then what are we actually doing here, right? That's the whole point, is now I have a boundary safety that I can use as a tool. So the first thing, day one install, sky to the X. What does that mean? I want to play base, right? So running back's not a receiving threat. I'm not worried about the push. They leave them in. If it's not a big deal, they're not playing games. I'm going to get a flat foot read with the safety, and I can play mod or mess with the corner, just depending on what we're getting by number one, right? If I want to, hey, look, I want to go ahead and I want to force the fade route, I'll press. If I don't, they're doing a bunch of different things. I want more of, there are a lot of post action, a lot of verticals, then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to play mod coverage. Now, obviously off of that, you can bail. And what I tell these safeties is, look, you are a flat foot read. It is going to be just like your poach technique. Okay, except for if you do get run action, you've got to sprint right now. So if we get speed option, I'm the force player. I got to go to the pitch, and we should have a quarterback player with the 5, and we should have our linebacker rolling off the top. On top of that, running back is not a threat. So again, sky coverage versus the X. This is the base way of playing it. Your boundary safety essentially becomes the will linebacker, but from depth. So if you think of trips, we're pushing the nickel or the Sam out. Now the Mike is the Sam, the will is the Mike, and the boundary safety becomes the will. That's where you get your 7-man spacing from. And so that's where we want that boundary safety flat foot. And I tell them, sit in a glance window as much as you possibly can. Don't move from the glance window. You want them to run that elongated slant, and they want to run it right into you. The next progression from that, I want to be aggressive. I don't want the inside linebacker in coverage. They're pushing the running back, but we want to play sky. I don't want to take my cornerback off of number one. I don't want to cloud it. We'll talk about that soon. But I don't want the inside linebacker in coverage. I want a quick force near the box. They're really hammering us with, let's say they're a quarterback run team. They're hammering us weak side with quarterback ISO or quarterback power. Hey, I need a guy down there right now. We will thumbs it. All thumbs is this thumbs down. I'm telling that corner, hey, I'm going down. We do not press in any kind of inverted. So either we're going to bail or we're just going to go ahead and play mod, and we are playing deep. I'm not worried about hitches. I should not be biting on hitch and goes. I should not be biting on slants. I should be capping everything. I should be there for the sluggo. I should be there for the fade. I should be there for the post. I should be there for the dig. I should be capping everything. I want no slant window, and I know the corner is going to be on top of everything. So that's where we will thumbs it. I love thumbs, again, when you have an athletic quarterback. They love to run weak on you. They think that they can get it. They see that everything's pushed over to the trips. They see this big old bubble over here with nobody. That's when thumbs is really good. You can either be a hard thumb, and he can get down there and just line up at 3x3 or 4x4, however you want to do that off the in-man line scrimmage. Or I like better a sink technique, which is I teach my safeties a step off, which is a step replace, step replace, step replace. A sink is just the opposite. It's a step forward, replace, step forward, replace, step forward, replace. I in the mesh, if 2 were to go out, I'm going to zone over it. Again, cough technique, curl over flat, no cover zone, anything under 5 yards, the ball has to bring me down. That will help you with the hitches, the snag concepts, the pick concepts. That will help you with the curl flat concepts. And again, if he were to wheel up, that safety would buy him, and then your backer's working the vertical hook. Anytime I do a breakdown of trips, I'm always going to check what the back is doing. If it's quads, then I just have to decide, are they sprint out, pushing everything? Maybe they're a 4-load team, big on that, then we're probably going to solo poach it, right? If they're kind of a traditional, I don't want to necessarily lead that corner all by himself over here. They will run the ball. Then now I'm thinking, okay, regular sky. Okay. What I see when we get the running back week, and I always check this, is how many times the running back go out. If the running back is going out, we treat it like empty. And the best way to treat it like empty, 1 and 2 are close. We want to treat the running back like a number 2 receiver. We're going to play cloud. So we're going to treat 3-by-1 like empty. Running back is a threat. Let's say they have a really good running back that can catch the ball. They want them out of the backfield. They're playing a lot of 2-man games. They're running slant bubbles. Or flares. They're running slant wheels. They're running curl wheel. They're doing a lot of things, snag concepts, and they're trying to get the back. Then we will run cloud and build a triangle over that. Again, it alleviates that backer from not always having to chase the back to the flat. So get a natural double on the X as well, because if the back stays in, the corner and the safety now can funnel each other and they can work together to create a cone. And so that's important to me too, is why would we do that? Well, we get a double on the X if we don't get the running back to the flat, or we get the running back in the down. So it gives us a way to naturally double that. Now, I think the one that a lot of people use is cone. So cone is essentially bracket. That's all it is. I want to double the X. I'm not worried about the running back. The backer can handle it. I am worried about the X. I think the biggest mistake I see in trips coverage is that you don't support your corner. If you've got a big time receiver over there at X and you've got a good to decent to average corner, he's okay sometimes, not okay others. I don't want to give up fatals. We've got this big stud receiver out there. I need to make sure that we get a double. Then I am playing cone. We are going to overplay the fade by the corner. It's going to be a soft press. He's going to almost like a bail, right? It's a catch mentality. I want to get out of there. I want to try and stay on top of it. I am not worried about any kind of inside release. Any kind of inside release, I'm going to have the safety nailed down on it. So the safety right now is going to hinge open to 1. 1 gives any kind of inside release and breaks inside, then he's going to nail down on it. Even if we get an inside release, right? Let's say they run like an inverted corner. That corner is going to play it just like a cover 2. So the moment that X goes inside, it becomes cloud force, right? So you will see guys when they talk about cone and they get run, it is cloud force, but he's working outside in. So if we get any kind of inside stem, let's say we get a dig, we get a slant, we get a post route, that safety is buying all of that. And that corner is in trail position, what I would call squat technique. He's in trail position and he's going to fall off if there's a run or he gets threatened with anything. Now, that does not mean if the running back goes to the flat, I'm falling off of. We're not playing cloud. If I wanted to play cloud, we'd call cloud. This is a true double on the number 1 receiver. And so I've watched film with coaches before, and they're like, yeah, we really struggled with this receiver at X. We couldn't figure it out. We're playing, we were not playing solo. We're just playing split field, but they didn't really, the safety is just squatting on the hash. He's not really doing anything, or they're playing solo and locking him. And it's like, dude, you got to get the guy some help. Right? It's okay to admit that your boundary corner can't handle a receiver on its own. How do you solve that problem? Again, that's where you solve it by putting the 3 and the 5 to the boundary so that you can build a wall and let that thing roll off the table. If it's going to go, it's going to have to get lateral. But also giving a partner to your corner. Hey, you play all the fade, I play all the post. Any inside stem, you get in a trail position, you play underneath, I'm going to play over top. And that's where we get this. Now, the mechanics for the safety, again, is going to be a step replace. It's a step off, but I'm hinging open. I really want to make sure I get my eyes to 1 before I do anything else. I really want to make sure I do that. And then again, once you've taught cone, you then can go and you can teach bracket on the front side of this. So finally, the last thing that we're going to talk about, and it's something that is kind of a passion project of mine. I want everybody to know quads out of trips. A lot of times, I hear this all the time by coaches, is that they don't understand the double push. And when 4 pushes, they teach it just like they would in a 2x2 set. And that nickel comes off, and there's no one for the number 2 receiver. Okay. Now, if you are playing true split field coverage, you are not pushing the coverage. So there really is no one capping that nickel. He's got to take it. So I always tell guys, beware of the double push. If number 3 pushes, the nickel and the mic are working together, right? Because that's number 3. It goes back to what I said in the original pod when we're talking about coverages, right? The geometry of coverages. The offense gives you 5 out. There's always a midpoint of 3. That's where your 2 linebackers outside of the mic are going to relate with each other. If it's 3, then I'm to the push side. So if 3 pushes, the nickel takes, the mic replaces. Okay. Normally, you're not going to get an arrow by 3 and then a bubble or a flare by 4. You're not going to get that. You're not usually going to get the double push that way. Okay. But what I always tell guys is if 4 goes, that is the mic and the will's responsibility to take it. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, then you need to be playing solo coverage. And now you've got problems on the backside. So you got to make sure that your corner understands that. So again, always beware of the double push and the quads. So that essentially wraps up our trips coverage pod, split field coverage. Again, we're going to go back through it. Solo poach is push. We're pushing everything. We're loading the zone. The offense is loading the trip side. We want to match that and load that. You have stress, which again, I've written multiple times about on a Substack as well as MatchQuarters.com. Go to the archive. It's stretching the coverage. We're stretching sky coverage. Then you have our cloud concept, which is going to be special stubby if you want to play loose or you're in the red zone. Stump was actually invented to cut off that double end corner route that a lot of these offenses like to run, where number 3 basically runs an elongated corner and forces the safety to chase him. You can get the corner right there too. So it's a way of detaching him and not always running that, which again, my philosophy is don't waste a guy in man coverage on somebody that's not normally going to catch the ball. So thank you for joining me today. Make sure to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to YouTube. Please, please, please go to matchquarters.substack.com, sign up, get the best in defensive content in your inbox every day. I'm trying to do a podcast and 2 articles a week. MatchQuarters.com is where I house the template shop. I also house my archive and a bunch of other links to everything. Use the QR. If you're watching on YouTube, use the QR codes. Follow me on social media. It's MatchQuarters wherever you social media, and then it's at @the_coach_A on Twitter. Make sure to again subscribe, like, and share these out. I appreciate the support, guys, and hopefully this gives you a better understanding of how to defend trips from split field coverage.